Hi, I'm Maureen, and I'm here with Catherine, who's a curator at the British Museum. So, to introduce Catherine, she's the curator of modern and contemporary prints at the British Museum, where she has spent over 10 years of her career. So, what does your role as a curator entail?
It's very varied. So I look after modern and contemporary prints primarily. I have a colleague, Isabel Seligman. She's responsible for modern and contemporary drawings, but in reality, we actually both work on both because there's lots of crossover. And we look after the collections in the 20th and 21st century, which are quite large. So we have to do lots of things around the existing collection. For example, we're constantly putting on displays and exhibitions in the Prints and Drawings Gallery. We also have to assess loan requests. We do a lot of acquiring. We are a very active department in acquiring things for the collection, and we're the most active in the modern and contemporary space. We acquire work in three different ways. We purchase some things, we accept donations, and we also get bequests. So with the donations and bequests, when we're offered something, we have to consider whether or not it's right for the collection and decide whether or not to accept it. And then with purchases, obviously that's a bit more proactive with making the decision to purchase something. And then once you've made that decision, we have a lot of admin and paperwork. There's a big process to go through with our acquisition. So that takes up a lot of our time. We do lots of talks and tours, lots of engagement with the public, with donors. We have to do a huge amount of fundraising. I think across the museum sector, we're having to do lots more to generate income. So that involves lots of tours and talks for patrons and things. There are many aspects of the job that are very mundane and boring. Like today, for example, I was updating our database with all the locations for the works that have been in our Picasso exhibition, which finished last week, and they've all now come off display. So I had to update the database to say where they were. That's the kind of boring side of the job. And then other times you might be out in New York at an art fair, going to lots of openings and things, and that's a bit more glamorous.
Does the British Museum acquire contemporary artworks, and what's the sort of policy on acquiring contemporary works?
Yeah, we absolutely do acquire contemporary works. So yeah, of course, the museum is best known for the mummies and the marbles and all, the archaeology. And if people are aware of prints and drawings, they probably are better aware of our kind of Rembrandt collections or our Michelangelo collections. The museum has always had contemporary art in it. So right from its very founding in the 18th century, there were Hogarth prints, which at that time were only 20 years old. So they were the contemporary art of the day. The collecting of contemporary art really took off in the 70s. From the 70s onwards, we've had a permanent modern and contemporary curator in our department. We've really been active as a department in collecting contemporary art. So it is definitely the biggest area of our collection in terms of what's growing at the moment. We're acquiring more work in that area than anywhere else across the museum, but it's not as visible to the sort of outside world.
Yeah, and that's why it's so interesting, is that we're looking under the surface of the exhibitions and seeing how it works behind the scenes. What are the key factors that curators consider when acquiring contemporary works?
Well, we have to consider storage and conservation. So as part of our acquisition process, we have to get an assessment from our colleagues in the collection management department, which deals with storage, and the conservation department. And generally, they're not happy for us to acquire anything if we don't have the storage for it. So anything enormous is quite difficult for us to collect. Anything with any kind of problematic materials. So, for example, recently we were offered a large number of prints and drawings by Roy Lichtenstein from the Roy Lichtenstein Foundation, which was great. But as part of the initial group, they offered some drawings that were on cellulose acetate. They were sort of preparatory drawings, and cellulose acetate degrades if it's not kept in cold storage. It's a bit like film. So we just don't have those facilities because we don't have a photography collection. So we had to turn that down. So those are the kind of negative things. If it's got a conservation problem or it's difficult for storage, then that's a problem for us. In terms of what we're looking for, a really good quality. We want to maintain the standard of the collection. I mean, I know that's subjective, but we try to make decisions collectively. So it's not just one person's taste. Something that we feel will stand the test of time, that people will still be interested in the future. Quite often we think about how something fits with the rest of our collection. So how, if there are connections with other things in the collection, how we might display it. We have to think about, if we're acquiring work, are we going to get an opportunity to display this work and what the context might be? Because in some ways, there's not much point in us acquiring something if it feels like we're never going to put it on display because it just doesn't fit with anything else. So those are all things that we think about.
Yeah, that makes sense. Where do you look, or where do curators look in general, for contemporary works to buy?
We go to a lot of art fairs. That's one of the ways we can see a lot of things at the same time. Some of the big ones like Frieze, sometimes Art Basel. We go to sort of specific drawing and print fairs. So recently we had the London Original Print Fair here in London. There was the New York Print Fair last week. There was a fair in Paris. So we do lots of that kind of thing, going to art fairs. We try to go to galleries, exhibitions. Sometimes we'll do studio visits. We get a lot of emails from artists proposing donations, and if we're interested, then perhaps we'll visit their studio.
So you mentioned emails from artists who are proposing to donate. What's the ideal format for you so that it makes your job as a curator easy? Is there anything that you're looking for in an email from an artist? Is there any ideal format that makes it easy for you and that makes it interesting for you?
We get a lot of emails and it can be very time consuming to go through them. So it's useful to have a kind of summary of what the artist is proposing. If an artist is wanting us to buy their work, then it's good to know that up front. Or if they're proposing a donation, it's also useful to know. Sometimes it can be tricky to try and work out what the offer is or what the proposal is. I think it's really important, if you're writing to us about your own work or somebody else's work, to include images, because we really need to have an idea of what the work looks like, although of course you can't fully understand it just through a photograph. If the artist has any exhibitions coming up or is going to be in an art fair or anything like that, then it's useful to know, because then we can look out for their work. If they're represented in other collections, that's really helpful to know as well. I mean, this is very print specific. Because prints are multiples, we try not to replicate what is already in another national collection. So if Tate or the V&A or National Gallery Scotland, for example, have a particular print, then we would try not to buy the same one. So it's good to know about that kind of thing as well.
Thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch the full 1-hour interview and get top tips from an expert, then click the link below and join the Art Ladder mentoring program now. By joining the Art Ladder, you will get access to our full library of webinars with curators, collectors, critics, gallerists, and more. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this, and check out the description below for more free resources for artists.